back in the time when we started our business, as I mentioned, almost no one used to become an entrepreneur. It was like the people didn't even know the word. There is sort of no one template to what a successful entrepreneur is.
I continue to struggle to admit that I am struggling with something.
Kunal are like a married couple.
बहुत ही सही लगता है मेरे को.
100%. Everything we do is exactly the same. Buying things doesn't give me happiness.
You have to learn to love yourself more than what you think the person who loves you most loves you.
Remember the message of Gita that just focus on your actions, care most about what you are doing and whether you could have done better than that, and leave the results.
That's the thing with entrepreneurship, right? I think you make a very important point. Financial freedom happens in spikes. If it ever happens, if the company does very well, it is very back-ended. It is not driven by salary at all. It is driven by secondaries, right? Or if you have, like in your case, you may have invested some money here and there in startups where the returns
it comes much later. So in some ways it is hyper delayed and unclear gratification if it ever happens.
But extraordinary in terms of proportion. If
when it happens most
you can't plan for that, right? You can't plan for that.
I don't think you can. And it takes time to actually adjust to that as well, I feel.
Once it happens?
Yeah.
Say more about that?
No, I think what I mean by that is that, look, I mean, just, talking about myself. My parents had planned, for example, because, like Indian parents, they wanted to plan for me. Like, where will he live and what will he do, etc. So they had bought a small plot of land back in the day, which they assumed that, once he graduates from college, once he starts working, when he gets married, we will be able to sell this land and maybe buy him like a 1 BHK apartment somewhere in NCR, if hopefully we should be able to afford that much. And that is going to be our way to settle down our son and make sure he has some place to live, which he owns, right? So that was the original plan. And that's how much money I came from, right? Because I don't think I'd ever seen or heard of even 1 crore rupees ever in my life, right? And no one in my family also, right? Cumulatively, all their lives put together, they would not have earned that much money. And suddenly, coming to a point, from a financial standpoint, where, it is still a lot of money, but you have more than that, right? And I think that's just a very different stage of life to get used to. Different sets of problems and different sets of things that come to your mind. So sometimes your first reaction can be, for many people, it can change them, right? That now I have so much money, I can do so many things, etc., etc. I think it brings out a very different part of your personality, because earlier money is a mechanism to survive, and right. So when all the money you would have, you just keep spending it to get your life to a certain level where it's comfortable.
Correct.
Then, if you are fortunate, things will reach a point where all comforts can be taken care of. Then beyond that, it's all what you want, not what you need.
Correct.
And I think that's when there's a big turning point that comes of deciding who do you want to be. Right? Because now you can be whoever you want to be to a large extent, because all your wants and all your needs are taken care of. From here on, whatever you're spending is because you want to, not because you need to. I think there I've seen the calibration just becomes very different in people, right? Because till the time you're comfortable, I think generally the progression is fairly linear, that you want to just be able to eat out once in a life, you need enough money to pay your rent, or at least have a house where you can live. You want to have at least be able to afford a car, let's say, to move around, etc. So those things are fairly basic, which are generally fairly universal in nature, right? There is not that much wiggle room before. Uske baad ab fir now you can buy a 5 lakh rupees wali car also, you can buy a 5 crore rupees wali car also. There's no upper limit to those things, right? So then it becomes about what you need. And I think I've seen that there's a different type of calibration you need to go through at that point of time on defining who you want to be, right? Do I want these things, or do I want these things, or do I want these things? And then people choose to spend on different things at that point of time.
What was it for you?
Yeah, for me, actually, for some reason, I realized that just I've just never been able to get used to spending too much money. I just can't. Right? Even now, I think this jeans cost 1,500 rupees. This shirt cost 19 or 1,800 rupees. I just can't spend more money than that. Right? वो मेरे से होता ही नहीं है खर्च. So, and I actually first I used to be very worried because, you know, I've seen all the people who would have money would carry sort of nice big logos on their clothes, etc., etc. So for some time I felt very tempted. And I indulged also, right? Once in a while, maybe I bought a 10,000 rupee pair of jeans once. But then I just realized it wasn't giving me happiness. I just wasn't feeling any more satisfaction in life than I otherwise am. So then I just recalibrated myself to a level where, you know, I only spend in things that would give me happiness rather than things that make me get perceived to be successful or have some money. I think that just almost doesn't bother me at all, right? So for example, I would spend, as I've mentioned, I have an espresso machine which costs 60 rupees for a cup of coffee at home, which is also expensive as compared to, let's say, a normal Nescafe or instant coffee. But that I'm okay to indulge in. I feel I can afford that much, right? And it gives me happiness to have that coffee because I like the taste of coffee. But I will do it for myself. Not because someone else thinks if he has an espresso machine, then he must be arrived in life. I don't care much about those things.
No, I think money for others is never the issue. I think wealth for self to enjoy things and for your loved ones to enjoy things. So for example, for Vyas and Ira to have experiences that you feel as a child maybe you may not have had. Or for your parents to have experiences which in their older age you can afford them to, which is maybe see the world or do things which otherwise they may not have imagined to do. That's where I think...
Exactly. I think the 2-3 things, I mean, just as in this journey that I learned is one, I mean, everyone has probably read it at some point of time, but I could relate to it that just buying things doesn't give me happiness, right? And I realized it for myself. There was this brief period of maybe 6-8 months when I bought a few things. I've read it elsewhere that buying things doesn't give you happiness. I experienced it firsthand also.
What's the most indulgent thing you bought other than the...
10,000 rupees ki jeans खरीदी होगी मैंने. But I think that's just, you know, like many times I don't even fly business class. So just, I can't, right? I feel here 5 घंटे में, if I have to spend 50,000 rupees more, I always do the calculation here. It's 10,000 rupees more per hour. I can be a little more uncomfortable for a few hours. So it's okay, right? So I think that's probably the most expensive thing that I bought, which I felt I am just going out of the way. But I think the few things that I do think money does, which I think are very valuable, it buys you freedom. That, you know, I always thought I did things that I wanted to do. But then knowing that you only need to do things that you need to do is a sort of big relief in some ways, right? And I think you can, for some people, it can be very, very, very important that you can really choose what you want to do. And keeping your expenses low also, that's very helpful there.
Yeah.
Because you don't need to keep raising the bar of how much you need to have to live a free life.
Correct.
So for me, freedom is very important. That I should be able to choose what I want to do. And I think in some ways having a certain level of money, as long as you keep your expenses low, which I try to, is a good ticket to do that you can really choose to spend your time either way you want to, so that you're truly enjoying life and doing the things that you want to do. That's number one. Second is, I think having enough for making sure your kids get good education and, you know, just some very, very important things which can otherwise be lifelong struggles. Those are taken care of. Third, to some extent, I like to travel, even though I don't spend too much money on travel. Even now, I live mostly in B&Bs. I actually don't enjoy living in the fancy hotels, etc. I like sort of more local type experiences. So I'm always booking an apartment where we go. But I do like traveling, right? So whenever we'll have a holiday, I feel happy that I'm at a point where I don't need to think twice about going for a holiday to Europe. Right? Or anywhere else in the world. कि यार ठीक है, इतने पैसे हैं मेरे पास कि मतलब I can buy a ticket and go and have a 7-10 day vacation anywhere in the world where I want to. I think these are the things that give me a lot more joy. The experiences that I can do some of these things versus being able to buy the flashiest of things or being able to show off that I have money. again, different things work for different people, and I'm sure I feel good for people who do that as well. There's nothing wrong with it, but I've realized that that's not me. And actually, coincidentally, neither is my wife Parul like that. She's even more miserly than me. वो तो उससे तो मैं तो 1900 रुपए की टी-शर्ट पहनी है, वो तो वो भी नहीं पहनेगी शायद.
That's amazing. I remember it fundamentally for me also. I come from a fairly financially privileged background, right? But for me, when that moment happened, and Bombay Shaving Company hasn't been the most spectacular meteoric rise valuation wise. It's been a humbling 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of a journey. But when we did find our foothold during COVID, tragic times for us, but for the business did very well. We had a lot more investor interest than the company could absorb. So it just by chance happened that there was demand for shares, and we had ESOPs that were not subscribed to beyond a point. So suddenly there was this demand, and the board said, hey, you know what, we have not done this for a while, and why don't we do it? And thank God someone pushed me to do it, because one is, you're right, it gives you freedom mentally, right? Because for 5-6 years you're struggling with मेरा दोस्त ना like जो McKinsey में है वो partner बन गया है, और मैं भी बन सकता था, right? Or whatever. But more because I think you suddenly have zero fear.
Yeah.
For me, fearlessness was the most amazing outcome. Yeah. It had nothing to do with my lifestyle. You're right. Like nothing changes in the way you buy things or whatever. Or travel. I don't like travel much anyway. My parents have made me travel way more than I wanted to. तो मेरे को बिल्कुल पसंद नहीं है traveling. I just do it very functionally. कि यार go somewhere to meet some people. For me, travel is social. I was in Dublin a few months back, and my friend was like, who's local in Dublin, works in Google. He said, यार let's go to the Guinness factory, let's go here. I said, नहीं यार मैं तेरे को मिलने आया हूँ. Let's stay at home and eat खिचड़ी. Like, तू कैसा आदमी है? 3-4 दिन Dublin आते, I have to take everyone around. I don't care about Dublin. I care about you. So for me, that has not changed. Yeah. But swinging for the fences, like kind of being fearless about the company, has changed a lot. Like now, I'm not worried about worst case scenario, and that freedom is amazing.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think that is the other aspect of freedom, that you are suddenly no longer doing it because you have to. You are doing things because you want to. And, I think there is a huge difference between the kind of things and the kind of ambition you would have when you want to do things versus when you have to do things. Yeah. It just changes you a lot. And I think I actually feel it brings even more energy and passion, because now it's your choice. Yeah. You don't have to do anything. Yeah. But if you're doing it by choice, then you'll be even more passionate about it. I could have spent my time doing anything else. Yeah. I am choosing to do this. So,
need to make sure it works.
I will make it count.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. I think when I spoke to you as a precursor to this conversation, I did not know that you and Kunal have been investing from so long, from 2011 in founders. And the reason, Rohit, and we discussed this at the Matrix event also, the reason we are doing this is that India needs to create 1 million jobs a month. Yeah. That's broadly what the government thinks we need to do. That's what all of our economic super brains have said. If we don't create 1 million jobs a month, we will reach a point where we will have far more unemployment than we can absorb, and it becomes a problem for the country. We are at 200,000 a month. So we are fair distance away. And like you said, what is promising is just the quality and quantum of entrepreneurs that is there. We still have far more capital, I think, as a country than we have founders. But it's amazing to see, like, today's 23-year-old out of college is incredible.
So bright. Like, sometimes I feel like, what were we doing? But it's all very good for the country.
And I'm hoping that they can go on to become more entrepreneurs, more entrepreneurial people in whatever they're doing. But tell me about your investing journey. How did you guys start? When did you guys decide in 2011? Like very early on in Snapdeal.
Very early. So I remember, I think this is a very, very interesting, again, as I feel in many things I've been very fortunate, more fortunate than many other people. I think it's again one of those things where it was in 2011, I think while our business was still young, but we'd been entrepreneurs for 4 years now, right? So at least, we had seen some years of entrepreneurship. And as a result, people in the ecosystem had start hearing our names, कि अच्छा इन लोगों ने company start करी थी. We had raised a couple of rounds of capital, etc., etc. And entrepreneurs who were just starting used to keep reaching out to us for, different reasons. The same reasons we would reach out to other entrepreneurs just to learn, avoid pitfalls, just to bounce off thoughts, etc. And I think at that point of time, and again, just going back to how we raised our first angel investment check, where, I think Ken was truly an angel in some ways. I think that's the definition of angel investment, or the meaning of the word angel investment, where he only knew Kunal and that's it, and he had never been to the country and that's it. And he said, he thought, smart guy trying to do something in a large market, it's okay, I'll help. And I think for us, honestly, I think the journey started as something very similar, and very small checks like 10-15 lakh rupees, etc. It's not even I don't think we even thought of it as something, an activity we are doing. We just saw it as an event that someone came to meet us. We liked the person. We thought, let's give the person some money, right? We didn't think where it can go, how many we will do, whether we will do it, is it a profession, will it make money? We didn't think of any of that. I think just as luck would have it, and we did this a few times.
And only do it both together or not at all, or did you do individually?
100%. So that way, I think me and Kunal are like a married couple.
बहुत ही सही लगता है मेरे को.
100%. Everything we do is exactly the same. Right. So exactly. So all companies we are invested in, both of us, either it's both in or both out. So it's
wow.
It comes two in a box.
Buy one get one.
So
your initial thesis has continued.
So as luck would have it, I think we didn't even think that much about it. So we started making some investments in entrepreneurs we met who we felt were very smart, were working with something which we felt is interesting. It was a good way for us to, in some ways, formalize our relationship, that when they reach out to us, then, just now we have a more formal relationship also. And also a way for us to keep ourselves current and keep learning new things, because we felt that, the world will keep moving on while our business, we will do what we are doing. A lot of things will happen in the world. And this in some ways is a vicarious way to stay very current in terms of what's going on in the world, or at least in the country. That's how it really started. And we were very fortunate that amongst the first few we did, one of them happened to be Ola. I think this first or second one was Ola, which is pre-Series A, right? So, in hindsight, it worked out okay. And then I think...
Did you exit it, or you still stayed invested?
Just very recently. So, for over a decade we were there.
Wow.
And then I think few down the line was Urban Company, when it used to be Urban Clap back then, when it was about to start. They hadn't even started when we invested. So I think, we kept doing this on and off, 1 or 2 a year, very small amounts of money. But then as things started working, we started enjoying it. Because we were doing this, more entrepreneurs would reach out to us. We really enjoyed meeting. We always enjoy meeting smart people. Both myself and Kunal are very passionate about entrepreneurship. So it used to just give us joy to meet people. And so we started doing it a little more than before. And then we also were very fortunate that amongst the first few one was Ola and one was Urban Clap, and I think a few more. So I think that also gave us the feeling that some combination of good judgment and good luck is working. I don't know which one in how many parts, but some combination seems to be working, that we have more successes than failures on this side. So then I think one thing led to the other. So we kept increasing the activity level as more people started reaching out to us. I think to now and we kept doing it slowly and steadily. To now, I think we are invested in over 200 companies. 8-9 of them would have become unicorns.
Which ones are these other than Ola and...
Ola is there, Urban Company is there, Mamaearth, Razorpay, off business. We were the first ones also.
Wow.
So quite a few. I think we've been very fortunate, and I think, I mean, as I continue to maintain that the quality of entrepreneurs in India is only going in one direction.
Correct.
And we've been very fortunate to be a part of so many journeys in some ways.
What connects the best entrepreneurs you have seen, other than you and Kunal? Of course, you see that journey closely, but through your investments, what is the one thread, or what are the few threads that are consistent across just great founders?
See, one of the things that I've learned, at least this is my learning, is that I used to earlier think, because I had just in the larger scheme of things, a fairly regular academic journey, right? I just very academically oriented, got decent marks in class 10, 12, then went to IIT. It's as typical as it can get. And I had this worldview which is very linear in some ways, that there is only one formula for success. Over the years, after seeing so many entrepreneurs, so many companies, so many different types of journeys, I've actually come to a different conclusion, that just no two people are the same, right? And every entrepreneur we meet is very different from the other one. There are some commonalities we see, but again, having seen so many different types of entrepreneurs and still being very successful eventually, I think for me it's been a fairly sort of mind-opening experience, if I may, that there is sort of no one template to what a successful entrepreneur is, because they come in very different, many of them are just very different ideologies, very different personalities, very different ways of building their business. So I don't think there is one template. The few things that we are able to connect to, both between myself and Kunal, when it comes to investing in some companies, one is, I think, as cliche as it gets, the team has to be really good. And it's important for us to be able to have a connect with the founder. They may be successful regardless of that, but at least for us to invest in a company, it is very important that we have connect, right? That doesn't mean this is the only entrepreneur who will become successful. There are many others who will become successful also. So that's number one. Number two, we do care about the market being large, because at least ourselves having been a part of a business where the market was too small as compared to our ambitions, we've seen that even fantastic entrepreneurs, if they get stuck in too small a market, it can actually be quite suffocating.
Yeah.
And as a result, having a larger addressable market allows you a lot more wiggle room, and allows you to make up for a lot more mistakes as compared to working on a really, really narrow market. So we do care about large market. And number three, we've seen with founders that, thirdly, I think we are also very obsessed about unit economics, by the way, and especially the businesses which have some form of commerce attached to it in the early days. So we do care. From day one, we would look at the unit economics of a business, because we feel in India especially, it's not only product market fit, it's product market economic fit, which is important, because without economics, many things can seem like they've achieved product market fit. When you try to make the economics work, you realize actually the product market fit was all driven by poor economics.
Correct.
So for us, economics is also very important. And as a founder trait, we've seen that we end up connecting the most to very smart, but also very humble and learning oriented founders who are not know-it-alls, right? By definition, to be a founder, you have to be a little more alpha, a little more aggressive, have enough belief in your own abilities that you have, you have the confidence to go and start a business. But at least we've seen that, there is a fine balance, that, you have enough belief in your ability, but you still have the humility to keep learning from your environment, and don't start considering yourself a know-it-all. We believe that you stop learning at that point of time, and as a result, we are not able to connect to those founders. So for us, the kind of founders we're able to connect to, that in spite of abilities, having that humility and eagerness to learn is equally important.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because we've seen that those end up growing the fastest, right? They will solve something, even if it doesn't work, they'll learn from it. And they'll keep iterating more and more and just keep becoming smarter as time progresses.
And I'm sure for you and Kunal, it has been a learning experience also, like working with founders who are more younger, more newer age, probably adapting technology in ways that you may not have thought of.
And also, smarter at solving different problems, having solved the same problem differently. I think just there is an incredible amount that we've learned in having seen so many founders and so many entrepreneurs. It just, I mean, going back in time, even if there were no financials involved, I would still not trade this experience for anything else. Just for the joy of having seen and learned so much.
There is a interesting framework which Chamath had kind of touched upon in one of his, I think one of his papers or on his podcast, I forget which. But he said that the three axes along which he measures future entrepreneurs is intellect, persistence / hard work, and third is the ability to have an unfiltered vision, like visionary, which is unfiltered. And he said different investors rank these three attributes differently. Like for some is one is important, the others are the like what? How would you rank these three? Intellect, hard work / persistence / drive, and third is vision, unfiltered vision. And if there is a fourth axis,
I think for me, I think these three are very interesting. I would definitely add a fourth one, which is willingness as well as ability to learn. I think that is so important.
Okay.
At least we've seen so many times, even in our own journey as well as in so many other journeys, that what people end up starting versus what people end up doing a few years down the line are so different.
Yeah.
And if one doesn't have the ability to learn, iterate, accept where things didn't work and then course correct, that we've seen becomes very, very important. So I definitely, for me, and probably that may be the most important also.
So willingness to learn and then rate the other
willingness as well as ability to learn. That's number one. Of the remaining, I would say, I personally believe hard work definitely trumps intellect. Intellect is important, but I feel after a certain level, hard work starts taking over.
Yeah.
I think there's a certain level of intellect that is required, but that intellect is low enough that hard work generally usually ends up trumping the other one.
That's what even people say in sport, right? That people who end up at a certain level of professional sport, across sports, whether it's football, cricket, tennis, whatever, is talent takes you this far. And the good thing about, not the good, but the interesting thing about sports is that level is reached at the age of 9 or 10 in professional sports. In gymnastics much earlier, in golf a little later, but broadly 9-10 की उम्र में वो talent barrier has been crossed by people who are there. Then it becomes the marginal utility of talent becomes zero. And then that's where hard work kind of comes.
But I believe that both hard work as well as great. I think that just having again seen our own journey, great. And just the willingness to continue becomes so important.
Yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit. Like I know while we were talking also, having fuel in the tank personally, right? Not financially or for the company, but personally to constantly come into work every day where, especially early on, where most days are difficult to get through. The future seems vague and unclear. Financially, you're always worried, shaadi hogi ki nahi, for example, who will want to marry me, or, I have to borrow money from my father. I think it is a much lesser spoken of element of entrepreneurship, which is the stress that you take for so long and the weight that you carry on your shoulders of your own head. I don't think it is so much your parents or your family or your friends as much as it is you yourself. And a lot of people, like I was reading a stat the other day around just the number of broken relationships or divorce rate within founders is so high. Mental illness propensity is so high. But at the same time, the world tells you, you need to be gritty and you need to kind of be at it all the time. How does one balance this? And you've had a 15-year entrepreneurial journey, a 11+ year investing journey. So you have 26 years of experience on this. Tell me a little bit about, and you said this is something that matters to you also.
It does. And I think in hindsight, I probably didn't realize it, but just it was happening in some ways. I think my parents used to talk a lot about Gita. I'm not personally, I'm not a very religious person. I'm spiritually oriented, but not a very religious person. But I remember as a child, I was always continuously told one thing, which is to remember the message of Gita, that just focus on your actions, care most about what you are doing and whether you could have done better than that, and leave the results. It is hard to assimilate, I must say. Even after so many years, it is hard to give up that attachment to results. But whenever I've been in stressful times, I've always gone back to that. And I think in some subconscious way, that's sort of been a guiding principle for me personally all through these years. And I think that's what shaped me, right? Before, there was a long period of time when I didn't even realize there are things known as stress and mental health issues. But I always used to remember one thing, which is what my parents taught me: focus on your work. Figure out whether you've done the best you could or not. If you could have done better, try and make yourself do better, but don't care about what happens as a result. Right now, I know later I realized this is a very well-known philosophy and very many people follow it. There's this very popular serenity prayer also, which is, I think, I forgot the exact word, but which is mainly that, figure out whether you could have, you can control the situation or not, focus on the controllable part of the situation and let go of what you can't control. I think in some ways that has been a guiding principle for myself. Even now, as I grew older and I started seeing more of life, I've actually gone back and read Gita multiple times, different versions of it. I think that book, I can relate to that book, and I think that's, in my view, one of the best texts ever written about, spirituality or mental health, etc., etc., etc. And just, I try my best to stick to the principles that I learned from the Gita. At least for me, that's been a very, very good guiding light through all these years, because stress manifests itself in many possible ways, right? It's not only one thing, right? It can be why are things not working out? It can be, when things work out, they worked out better for someone else than for you. Right? It can be about comparison. Am I working hard enough? I put in all the work, but the results didn't happen. The results came, but they are not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? Or so many things that you can't control. Right? There are only so many things that you can control. There are, I would say, far larger number of things that you can't control. But all of them can play on your mind for sure. Right? So just taking care of your own mental health and just keeping your well-being is an equally important part of an entrepreneur's life, in my view. So I do a few, personally, a few things that have worked well for me are, I think one is just, I probably keep revising Gita every few months. I think that just, for me, everyone picks what they can relate to. For me, I can relate the most to Gita. So I keep reading and rereading it multiple times. I think I also realized reasonably early on that if I want to keep doing this for the long run, I can't keep postponing everything else in life for too long, right? Which means that for me, for example, different things matter to different people. For me, especially family and relationships are very important, right? And so as a result, and two things actually, both physical and mental health, as well as family and relationships. These things are extremely, extremely important to me. So for a long time, I've always made time for these things. I would sacrifice many other things. Like, for example, for the longest time, I didn't used to watch TV at all. From class 12th till like 2-3 years back, I probably would see 2 hours of TV a year. Right? That little. Because I think that was not important to me. I would sacrifice that. It doesn't matter to me. But I would make sure every weekend I'll spend a few hours with my kids. Every weekend, I'll spend a few hours with my family. Physical health is important. Every day or every alternate day, I will spend at least 1 hour exercising, because I feel those are things which matter to me. And those are things that I need to take care of to make sure I can keep doing this for the long run, because I don't want to be a parent where 10 years later I realize my children have grown up, but I just spent so much time trying to, be successful professionally that I can't do that much about it now, right? Those 10 years have gone. So I don't want to be that parent. I think to me, it is very important that I have a good time with my family.
Yeah. One of our guests we shot with the other day said two very interesting things which stayed with me. One thing he said was, life is not lived on weekends. So if you want to live a good life, it has to be lived every day, which is what you're talking about. The second thing he said is there will be very few people who are lucky to have a long period of life where they are maximized on time, health and money. Right? All three.
Yeah.
Right? You typically at any stage in life, you will have two out of these three.
Yeah.
Even if you're lucky. Very few are fortunate enough to have all three for a long period of time. So I think just the ability to step back and take care of yourself is very important. Like we were talking about intermittent fasting, for example, right? Or going to the gym and exercising, what kind of workout you do. Nowadays, just because of COVID also, so much of this is now available on YouTube and you have Zoom sessions and so on. There's no real reason why one cannot take out the time to be able to do this. In fact, it's more important. But another aspect which I wanted to come to was founders, at least for me personally, I continue to struggle to admit that I am struggling with something, right? One, because anyone you tell this to, if it's your colleagues or your team or your employees, it's one of those, okay, if immediately that becomes, okay, what is at risk here if Shantanu is struggling or if he's not okay? What can't we trust? Are his decisions under question? Is the company not doing okay? So I find it hard to open up. Can't do it with investors because there's agenda. You can't. Like I maybe one or two have the maturity, but on the average for most people, in fact, I have a very, very encouraging set of investors. But for most founders, it might be a little difficult to do that. Even for me, it's a little hard. Friends and family, you can, but the context is so little that the ability to understand is. So there is really either there is an agenda or there is lack of context. Context plus no agenda is a very almost null set. So who do you share with? Like, I even tried therapy. It's very hard because it's almost impossible to. I find it hard to articulate also what the struggle is like.
No, you're absolutely right, and I can relate to some extent. I think in my case, I feel very fortunate that I started the company with a co-founder who's also a very close friend of mine. So I think, I personally do think it helps a lot to have a highly trusting co-founder with yourself, because then, you're sort of in it together, and, you're going to the same experiences in many ways. And when one is down, the other is doing okay, he'll pull the other one up, etc. So I think that definitely helps a lot. Secondly, I think I also went through this phase in between where, I used to feel uncomfortable sharing what is mentally good. I didn't know what's going on in my mind. Right? There's something going on, something which is a little noisier than it should be, but I was not able to either articulate it, or even if I could articulate it, I was still not very comfortable sharing with people. But then over a period of time, I think just as I mentioned, I started meditating, I started reading the Gita, and I think this, I never really went to therapy per se because I didn't feel I need it. I would have gone if I felt I needed it also. But I think it calmed me down, and I think just, spending time with friends and family, meditation, reading the Gita, etc., etc., I think that did calm me down. And then over a period of time, I met enough people who are also going through a lot of stress themselves. And I realized that this is common enough. It's not an uncommon topic. And then eventually for me, it got to a point where I felt, very uncomfortable not being who I am. If I'm stressed, I'm stressed. If I'm not stressed, I'm not stressed. And trying to pretend to be in a certain way, whereas I'm feeling a certain way, I just started feeling too uncomfortable. So then I think, I don't know specifically when that sort of switch flipped, but I do know it switched in the last 2 years somewhere, right?
Oh, really?
The last 2 years.
That's very recent.
Then when I felt, look, I'll only be very comfortable in my own skin and I will just stay the way I am. Let people read whatever they want to read out of it. Because just being any other way is just not worth it, right? And in the larger scheme of things, I feel we end up caring a lot more that people will think things a certain way. In reality, most times people don't care, right? Because they probably are going through it themselves or they've seen enough, right? I think sometimes you end up exaggerating how things are in your own mind as compared to how an outside person will believe. It's almost like having a product, right? That when you build a product, you think everyone cares, but in reality, nobody does, right? No one cares more than you yourself.
Yeah.
And as a result, I personally decided that it's not worth it to pretend to be a certain way if I don't feel comfortable in my skin. So then I felt, just let me chill. So since then I stay fairly relaxed. I say what I want to say. I don't care that much about how people perceive me to be. I know I have the right intentions. If they unfortunately sometimes get perceived wrongly, I will apologize.
Has it happened?
Many times.
What comes to mind?
No specific instances come to mind, but misinterpretations, they do happen, right? And unless you say something which is in as many words, sometimes people will misinterpret what you're saying. So you apologize and move on in life. I just feel that carrying that type of baggage, कि यार मुझे इतना काम भी करना है, I have to carry so much stress, I have to do A, B, C, my professional life, investing, family life, making time for so many things, and yet trying to make sure I'm perceived a certain way. I just felt it's too much calculation. I'll just left the last part out.
Completely agree. Completely agree.
So I stay relaxed, I stay chilled out. Yeah. People see me for who I am. If it works for them, great. Yeah. If it doesn't work for them, look, it's not like I need to be friends with everyone on the planet, right? As long as I have enough like-minded people around me, it's good enough. Well, and I've been fortunate to have enough.
One of the things people said about this is you have to learn to love yourself more than what you think the person who loves you most loves you. When you do that, you will prioritize the right way. And then things because a lot of people say, I don't care about what people think. They find it hard to practice it until they start really caring and loving themselves more than anyone else.
Yeah. That, and I think I still remember again, I feel different things work for different people. So for me, I think one is this focusing on actions rather than on results. As I said, it is hard to fully internalize and relate to, but I feel the number of times I read it just by repetition, it seeps in a little more every time. And secondly, I could also relate to, I think only very recently I read this very interesting book called Give and Take by Adam Grant. Yeah. I think he's more popular for his other book, Think Again, but I haven't read that one. I read this. And that philosophy I could read to, which I can relate to also, which is also, I was actually this morning only hearing a podcast by this person, Peter Kaufman, who's very popular, CEO of Glenair, is this concept of reciprocity, that if you are nice to people, eventually they'll be nice to you.
Correct.
And, just as simple as it sounds, I think I've more consciously started practicing it for many months now. And I do think it has changed things. I feel happier for sure, right? That I'm trying to do whatever I can to be a positive influence on whoever I'm meeting. And I've seen that just as, call it karma, call it reciprocity, or call it anything else, but I've generally been rewarded by more sort of pleasant experience and conversation with other people, so which I think is working for me.
As a principle, right?
And Gita also says selfless giving, which is the Gita way of saying it.
Yeah.
I think this is a very more contemporary way of saying the same thing.
They identify good people, do whatever you can to help them, explicitly ask them to help other good people they meet. The world becomes a better place for you to live in.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's amazing, right? How it comes back for you.
Yeah. So it's again very simple, but again, I've seen it work for me. So I'm even more motivated to continue doing it as much as I can.
Amazing. And how do you help your 200 plus founders, like for them to open up to you about when times are tough, when times are good, conversations are breezy.
Yeah.
When times are tough, bad quarter, senior two senior critical people have left, funding round does not happen, whatever, right? Whatever. That's when people need.
Those are actually the most common times entrepreneurs would call us.
Oh, really?
Because, in some ways, we are not I mean, we are investors in their business, but I think they also see us as operators and entrepreneurs ourselves who've, gone through this journey themselves, have seen many ups and downs in our own business as well as many other businesses. And I think that way they can relate to it. And many of the entrepreneurs would call us with many of such situations because, I think having been through it ourselves and having seen so many journeys, we are able to relate to them, right? And we don't have any agenda per se because we genuinely care that as long as the entrepreneur is okay, if the business does well, we'll also do fine. If it doesn't do well, then just harassing the entrepreneur to do something is not really going to solve anything for anyone, right? It's only going to make the life of a already stressed entrepreneur even more miserable. Just not worth it.
It's amazing actually you say that. Now that I think about it, you and Kunal only put your own capital. You don't raise from LPs and this and that, right?
Okay.
Those are the two things that I think make it easy. If you were my investor, which I wish you were, but if you were my investor, one is you have operated businesses and you're fairly transparent about the tough times you and Kunal have gone through.
Yeah.
So, which is rare, right? Because typically investors are larger than life, large, seen many entrepreneurs, this, that, and the other. They have, and most of them have not been operators before, at least in the Indian context. The second thing is, you don't have fund economic cycles to answer to, LPs to answer to. You're answerable only to yourself.
Yeah.
Sure, there is financial outcomes that the fund requires and you're running it, but it's contained within you and Kunal, right? So if that is the situation, then I think it becomes easier because all the variables are kind of known.
And also, I think, there's a third very important factor, Shantanu, that, both myself and Kunal actually lead fairly simple lifestyles, right? We don't have any sort of, any expensive habits, if I may. And as a result, while economics are good when they happen, we don't think our life depends on it.
Yeah.
And as a result, we just stay fairly relaxed about them. So we actually genuinely do it for the joy of doing it. Good things do happen financially as well.
For sure.
But we don't care that much for it. For us, I think, being there for entrepreneurs is so much more important. Eventually, sab theek hi hoga yaar. It's not a big deal, right? And also just having been through this journey ourselves, we feel people are very smart. We don't need to pretend to be smarter than them because we don't think that is the case, right? Yeah. We consider ourselves to be reasonably smart, but we think there are much smarter people than us who are running businesses. So we don't need to pretend, and we don't feel we have to show that we are somehow smarter than the others. We don't, because at the end of the day, many of these businesses, we are not the ones who are building it.
Yeah.
We are very clear we are investors. We are available as sounding boards whenever you need help, whenever you need to sound off something, pick our brains on something. We are always available when people want us. But it is the entrepreneur's business. We can't run the business for them. We can't expect to be smarter about their own business than them. They are in the driver's seat. And if something good will happen in the company, it will be because of the entrepreneur. If something not so good will happen, that is also because of the entrepreneur. Never have we seen a situation where an investor has been over intrusive and made a company which was otherwise not going to work.
Yeah.
That just never happens.
Agree. No, that's amazing. Tell me about your and Kunal's relationship over the last 15 years. Was it ever tested?
Many times, but I think, I think we were very good, as I mentioned, very good friends in high school. And then when we started working together professionally, that was probably the first time, understandably, when we had professionally gotten to know each other. We knew each other as school friends, but that's very different from working together. And when we started working together, both of us had worked for a year each. So we didn't really know what each of our strengths and weaknesses were. So I would say the first of all, we always had a lot of trust and respect for each other. I always had a lot of trust in Kunal and a lot of respect for who he is as a person, and I believe vice versa. So for the first few years, it took us some time when we were getting to know each other a little better. That, what is he good at? What am I good at? On many things, we'll have completely different opinions. So we'll just get into a room, talk it out, and come up with a conclusion, etc. So I think that used to happen a lot more in the first few years. After some time, both of us sort of in a implicit way started understanding what is he good at, what am I good at, how to resolve conflicts, how to take decisions, etc. I think just because of working together for such a long period of time, we started getting comfortable with that. Since then, it's been fairly seamless. The one thing we've never let come to question is the relationship between the two of us. We almost consider it as a marriage. I think for us, our wives also tell us the same thing, that you guys seem to be more married to each other than
to both of
each of us. But I think for some reason, the fact that the relationship between the two of us could be temporary is a thought that has never even occurred to us since almost forever. And wow. I think that just brings a different type of permanence, almost like a family relationship between the two of us, that just we consider it to be a permanent thing. And as a result, we don't even question its existence. So whatever happens, we assume we are in this together. And I think that I've seen that just having that feeling of permanence in your own mind automatically solves many problems.
Yeah.
Right? Then you're never looking for personal victories. Then you're only looking for joint victories.
Yeah.
And just the moment you're able to dissolve your own personal ego into a joint ego, I think 90% of relationship issues go away.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible, because so many companies fall to the wayside despite large markets, smart teams, capital, all of that, because founders did not get along, or founders kind of had very different things to do. I also feel, by the way, and looking at this conversation has opened my eyes to you as a person. Before this, you were always enigmatic. So was Kunal. Just kind of for at least many of us who we didn't work together or were in the same circles. But and it comes down to just being really good human beings. Trustworthy, good people with the right intent and heart on the sleeve is so important. And then when there is complete knowledge of that, you are saying that permanence and that faith, you're never second guessing then.
Yeah.
Then you always know that there's someone who has your back.
Yeah. That's what I meant. That for us, we've never imagined a world where things are otherwise. So for us, this is the way things are, and I consider myself very, very fortunate and very lucky to have a co-founder like Kunal, who's almost like a family member, right? Not almost, actually, he's
married to you.
Probably more than a family member to me.
Yeah.
And I think just I think the relationship that I have with him is truly special. I really, really respect him for who he is. Obviously, I have incredible amount of trust in him, and so I think just I actually feel very lucky to have a co-founder like that as well. I can completely imagine many people would envy a relationship like that. Yeah. So as a result, I feel myself to be lucky to be in a place where I have someone like Kunal to share this professional journey with.
And meeting of minds is critical, which is amazing that it happened in high school. Yeah. Because meeting of minds requires not only complementary skill sets, which is I think a lot of people will find, but in the same ballpark of intellectual rigor, ability to work hard, and all the other things which we spoke about.
Yeah. And yet be able to respect each other.
Yeah. Because ego can become big. No, there's an attempt to be alpha. It's natural instinct for entrepreneurs, especially super successful ones, but then to have amazing actually that you talk about.
So I consider myself very
touch wood, man. And you guys are both so young, so I'm assuming that there's a lot of things beyond Snapdeal and Titan and all the things that you do that you will continue to do. And what's the future looking like, Rohit, for you?
I mean, this mode of operation sounds fantastic. We're really enjoying running our own business as well as investing, talking to entrepreneurs. So I think I feel we could continue doing this for as long as possible.
But are you on the high burn all the time today, the way you may have been in 2009 maybe or 2008?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think just over a period of time, that part of our mindset has also evolved as a business. That both me and Kunal, we just are unable to relate to high burn businesses. Both of us.
No, by high burn I don't mean capital burn. I meant for you, like.
No. I think that
the hours put into the business and working weekends.
Intense, but they don't feel intense if you're enjoying what you're doing.
Also on your time, right now.
Right. So I think hence we still are reasonably intense and spend more than enough amount of time, almost as much as we've done for a long period of time. But over so many years, we've calibrated our life to make sure we are operating in a manner that the important things in life are not being postponed. Right, as I mentioned, to me, few important things are health and both physical and mental, as well as family. These are the two most important things to me outside of work. Those two things I'm unwilling to postpone. Yeah. So those are going along with me. I spend enough time with family. I really enjoy them. They've been very, very, very supportive all through these years. Both my kids as well as my wife. My parents also live with us. So that I've never really sacrificed. And I sort of, over so many years, I think same applies to Kunal. We've created enough of a balance in our life that we feel this pace of life can continue for a very, very long period of time.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
Any last, as we end, any word of advice to people watching who are likely to be entrepreneurs, founders in the future, or already are in the early stages of their journey, in addition to what we have spoken about today?
So I think, I can share that for me, I still, although it happened so many years back, but that experience is still relatable to me is when I came to Delhi for the first time to DPS and seeing the fact that I used to have this mental image that people who go to IIT are some like superhuman aliens or something like that. And when I saw many of the people around me go there, it just humanized everything for me. And I could relate to all of that. I feel entrepreneurship is the same. Somehow or the other, there is sometimes a tendency to build this mental image that people who start companies are some superhumans who have this vision, etc. At least having been an entrepreneur myself and having seen so many entrepreneurs around myself, I feel everyone is a human being. It's all about who's willing to take their chances and give it a shot and who's not willing to give it a shot. So as long as you're willing to give it a shot, it's not that complicated. Over a period of time, you'll figure things out.
Thank you, Rohit. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible conversation for me. Multiple moments where I just kind of stepped back and thought about myself in a deep way. And thank you so much for spending the time and being so generous with your insights. Thank you so much.